The day I found my own face staring back at me from a stranger's bedroom wall, I learned two things. First, there is no such thing as too paranoid when you're rich. Second, you can be a cynic for 11 years in business, guard every deal, every clause, every number, and still hand your heart to the one person who did a better due diligence on you than you ever did on anyone. My name is Jeremy Cole. I'm 31, a real estate developer, a millionaire by every magazine's lazy definition. People like to talk about my buildings, my portfolio, my vision. They say I'm young and ruthless and lucky. No one talks about the night I stood in a dusty house in the countryside, looking at a wall covered with my life. No one talks about Lyla. I tell myself this is just a story. Something I'm getting off my chest, so maybe I'll sleep a full night again. But if you're listening because you want a cute tale of a barista and a CEO falling in love in a coffee shop, this is not that. This is about how a girl who looked like innocence carefully studied me like a test she refused to fail, and how I let her. I wasn't always this careful. At 26, I was the kind of man who answered emails at 3 in the morning and thought a weekend getaway with my wife meant taking her to see my new project breakground. Her name was Natalie. We met in college, before the money, before the articles. She liked me when I still rented a room over a garage and thought real estate meant owning a duplex one day. I thought that counted for something. When the money came, I assumed our life would get easier. It didn't. It just got louder. Investors, brokers, contractors, banks, lawyers. Every day there was something only I could fix, something that couldn't wait. I started missing dinners, birthdays, anniversaries. I told myself it was temporary, that once the portfolio was stable, I'd slow down. People like me always think there's a finish line where we finally become the person we promised we'd be. The night she left, she didn't scream. She just stood in the doorway with a suitcase and said, "You're married to your work, Jeremy. I'm just a tenant you occasionally remember to pay attention to." I laughed, actually laughed, because it sounded like a bad line from a movie. She didn't laugh back. A month later, the divorce papers landed on my desk, along with a neat little note in her handwriting. "I hope someday you realize love is not another project you can put on hold." When the dust settled and the lawyers had eaten their share, I did what I do best. I made a plan. Next time, I told myself, it'll be different. If I ever fall in love again, I'll show up. I'll put the phone down. I'll make time. I'll listen. No more after this deal. No more just one more call. I decided I'd still be a cynic in business, but I'd be soft at home. I thought that was a smart compromise. I didn't realize I was practicing vulnerability for the worst possible student. I first noticed Lyla because of a t-shirt. There's a coffee shop on the corner by my office. Not one of those chains. An independent place with exposed brick, plants in mismatched pots, and a chalkboard outside that always had some ironic quote about caffeine and productivity. I went there when I wanted to be just another guy in a button-up, not "Mr. Cole, can I bother you for a moment?" The staff knew my order. Black Americano. And they knew better than to talk business. I walked in one Tuesday morning, half awake, brain still replaying a tense negotiation from the night before, and there she was behind the counter, wearing a faded t-shirt from my favorite band. Not just any band, a pretty obscure one I loved since I was 17. Not the sort of thing you saw in a random 20-something barista in the middle of the city. She was small and slim, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a few strands falling near her cheeks. No heavy makeup, just a natural, shy kind of pretty that made you look twice without being able to explain why. She glanced up from the espresso machine and smiled. It wasn't the tight customer service smile I was used to. It was softer, almost like she was surprised to see me. "Next, please," she said, and her voice had this slightly nervous tremor, like she wasn't used to calling attention to herself. I stepped forward, wallet already in hand. "Americano, right?" she asked. "No sugar?" I blinked. "You're new. How do you know that?" Her cheeks went pink. "Oh, I've seen you come in a few times. I worked afternoons before. Now I'm doing mornings. You always order the same thing." She hesitated, then added quickly, "Sorry, that sounded creepy." I felt something in my chest loosen. "It's fine. Just means you're good at your job." She smiled again, more relaxed this time, and as she turned to make the coffee, I saw the back of her t-shirt, the band's logo, the date of a tour I'd gone to in college. "You like them?" I asked, nodding at her shirt. Her eyes lit up. They're my favorite. I didn't think anyone around here even knew who they were. Same, I said. They're the only reason I survived my first year of college. She laughed, this soft, sincere sound. For me, it was when I was 16. Rough year. Their lyrics made me think I'd get out one day. I didn't know then how literal she meant that. By the way, she said, sliding the cup towards me, this one's on the house. Consider it a welcome from the morning shift gift. That's not necessary, I started, reaching for my card. She shook her head. It's okay. My manager's not here yet. There was something conspiratorial in the way she said it, like we were sharing a harmless little secret. What's your name? I asked. Lyla, she said. With a Y, not an I. People always spell it wrong. It suits you, I said, and immediately felt foolish. I didn't flirt, not with staff, not anywhere near my office. I like clean lines between personal and professional. But she didn't look offended. If anything, her blush deepened. And you are? She asked. Jeremy. She cocked her head, studying my face for a second. Nice to meet you, Jeremy, who always orders an Americano and has perfect taste in bands. I smiled despite myself. Nice to meet you too, Lyla with a Y. I walked out of that coffee shop telling myself it was nothing, just a pleasant interaction. A barista who happened to like the same band. But the next morning when I went back, she smiled in recognition and said, the usual, and somehow over the next weeks, my mornings were no longer about coffee. They were about seeing whether she'd be there. She always was, and every day she was a little more tailored. One morning she mentioned offhand that she used to have a pug when she was a kid. His name was Peanut. He snored louder than my dad. She laughed. I miss him every day. I froze. You had a pug? Yeah. Why? She asked innocently. I have one now, I said. Oliver. He snores too. Her eyes widened. That's so cute. I swear pug owners are like a secret club. Another day she had a paperback novel tucked beside the register. The same author I'd mentioned in an interview a year back, talking about how his books got me through some rough teenage years. You like him? I asked. She glanced down like she'd forgotten it was there. Oh, yeah, I've loved his stuff for years, she said quickly. I reread this one whenever I'm stressed. I remember thinking, what are the odds? I chalked it up to fate. I should have remembered I don't believe in fate. For the first few months, Lyla was just my morning habit and a pleasant conversation in a life of spreadsheets and site visits. We talked about small things, music, books, the weather. I noticed she never talked about her family, except for quick mentions that always sounded rehearsed. Do you ever go home for the holidays? I asked once. She shook her head. No, my parents died when I was 20. She said simply, wiping down the counter with practiced motions. Car accident. It's just me now. I'm sorry, I said. She shrugged, but her eyes looked down, her lashes lowered at the exact angle of someone wounded but brave. It's okay. It was a long time ago. I didn't push. People are entitled to their silences. I told her a bit about my own family. My parents, still together, still living in the same small house they bought when I was a kid. My brother, who tried to work with me, then decided he preferred a quiet life as a teacher. I mentioned my ex-wife once in passing. You were married? She asked, surprised. Yeah, we were young. I was busy. I wasn't what she needed. Lyla studied me for a second, eyes soft. Her loss, she said. It was such a simple phrase, but the way she said it, like she truly believed it, settled somewhere deep under my ribs. I didn't realize how badly I needed someone to say that until she did. The night everything shifted, it was raining. I'd had one of those days that start badly and steadily get worse. A deal that looked done came apart at the last minute. A contractor tried to slip an absurd clause past my legal team. My phone didn't stop buzzing. By 9 p.m., my head was pounding. I stayed late at the office, the lights of the city blurring outside the glass. When the elevator finally dropped me to the lobby, I was ready to go home, pour a drink, and not speak to another human being. Then I saw her, Lyla, sitting on the steps just outside the building, under the weak glow of the front lights. No umbrella, just a thin jacket, damp from the rain. Her knees were drawn up to her chest, arms wrapped around them, her hair clinging to her cheeks. She looked small, fragile, completely out of place against the steel and glass. I pushed open the door. "Lyla!" She jerked her head up. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. When she saw me, her mouth parted in this stunned little "oh," like I'd appeared out of nowhere. "Jeremy?" she whispered, scrambling to her feet and wiping at her face. I didn't know you worked here. I was just sitting. I swear, I wasn't waiting for you or anything. She cut herself off as if realizing how that sounded and gave a shaky, embarrassed laugh. "I'm sorry," she added quickly. "This looks so weird. I was just walking and needed somewhere to stop, and I didn't even realize this was your office building until you stepped out." On the surface, it was a harmless lie. The "what a coincidence" act. At the time, it felt like fate. Later, I'd remember that she'd known exactly which company was headquartered here for weeks. Right then, all I saw was a girl falling apart in the rain. "You're soaked," I said. "What are you doing out here? It's late." She gave another weak laugh that broke in the middle. "I know. I didn't know where else to go." Panic flickered in her eyes, and she bit her lower lip like she was trying not to cry again. Something inside me snapped into protective mode. "Did something happen?" She swallowed. "They fired me," she said. "At the coffee shop, they called it downsizing, but—" She shook her head, tears spilling over. "I don't have anyone here. No real friends. I rent a room an hour away and my landlord already hates me, and I thought if I walked around a bit I'd calm down, and I ended up here. Then you came out and—" She looked down, embarrassed. "I sound insane." "You should have called," I said. She blinked. "I don't have your number," she said quietly. "You're my customer. I didn't want to be weird or cross a line, and I had no idea you worked in this building. I thought you were just one of the office guys from around here." There was that line again, one of the office guys, the part where she carefully pretended not to know who I really was. Back then, it felt refreshing. Someone who didn't see Jeremy Cole's CEO, just a tired man in a shirt and tie. "Come inside," I heard myself say. "You're freezing." She hesitated, glancing up at the glass facade like it was forbidden territory. "Inside? Here? Won't your boss be against it?" she asked, genuine worry, or what looked like it, crossing her face. "I don't want to get you in trouble with your company or anything." The words hit a strangely soft place in me. She really seemed to believe I answered to someone, that I had to ask permission. For a man who'd spent years being the final signature, the top of every org chart, it was disarming. "I'll risk it," I said, a wry smile tugging at my mouth. "He's usually pretty understanding." She let out a fragile, watery laugh. "Okay, if you're sure." "I'm sure," I said. "Come on." I led her through the lobby, up to the private elevator. She shivered once when the doors closed, hugging herself tighter. "You really don't have to do this," she murmured. "I don't want you to get yelled at by your boss because some pathetic ex-barista cried on his doorstep." "If anyone yells at me," I said, "I'll have a word with him." She smiled at that, not understanding the joke, and somehow that made it land even harder. Upstairs, in my penthouse, I handed her a towel and one of my hoodies. She disappeared into the bathroom, and when she came out, swimming in my clothes, she looked even smaller. She sat at the edge of my couch, hands wrapped around a mug of tea like it was an anchor. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is so unprofessional. I know you're busy and important, and I'm just showing up at your office like some drama queen. If your boss finds out—" "Lyla," I cut in gently. "Trust me, my boss won't mind." She frowned a little as if trying to read between the lines, then let it go. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she whispered instead. "Because my ex-wife once told me I didn't show up when it mattered. Because I'd promised myself I'd never again be the man who turned away from someone in pain. Because her eyes looked like every abandoned dog I'd ever seen. Because you deserve it," I said. That night, she slept on my couch in my hoodie. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, feeling something shift in my chest. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I was being decent, human. Within a month, her toothbrush was in my bathroom, her clothes in my closet, her laughter in my kitchen, and for the first time in years, my apartment felt like a home. For 8 months, Lyla was everything I'd once imagined wanting. Not in a glossy, perfect way, in the precise, tailored way that my weaknesses demanded. She never complained about my hours, but she somehow knew when to pull my phone from my hand, flip its screen down, and drag me to the balcony with 2 glasses of wine. She woke up early to make coffee for me at home exactly the way I liked it. She'd set the mug next to my laptop, kiss my temple, and slip away without asking about emails or deals. She listened, really listened. She remembered names of employees I talked about once. She remembered which building I was stressed about, which investor annoyed me. When I told her about Natalie, about failing that marriage by drowning in work, she didn't judge. "You were trying to build something," she said. "You just didn't know when to stop. You're clearly trying to do better now." I was. I started leaving the office at 7 instead of 9. I put my phone on airplane mode for dinner. I took her away for a weekend to the coast. I looked at real estate listings not as investments, but as places we might live in. She rarely asked for anything expensive. When I bought her a designer bag one day between meetings, she stared at it like it might explode. "It's beautiful," she said, "but it's too much." "It's just a bag," I said, half laughing. "I wanted to spoil you." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't want to be that girl," she said softly. "The one everyone looks at and says, 'Of course she's with him. Look at the things he gives her.' I don't want to be with you for your money, Jeremy. I'm with you for you." Coming from anyone else, it would have sounded like a line. From her, with her serious eyes and bitten lip, it felt honest. I returned the bag. We went to the park instead, Oliver dragging us toward every tree, and I let myself believe some people really weren't impressed by wealth. Sometimes at night she'd lie with her head on my chest and talk about the future. "I can see us in a small house one day," she murmured. "Not some giant glass palace. Just cozy. Maybe kids. Me making pancakes, you burning bacon." "I do not burn bacon," I protested. "In my fantasy you do," she smiled. "It makes you more human." I kissed her hair and thought, this time I'll get it right. 8 months in, I was choosing a ring in my head and rehearsing proposals on elevator rides. I didn't know that while I was planning to give her my last name, I still didn't know her real story. The first crack came from a mistake, or maybe from my thumb slipping. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed into the living room. Oliver snored on the rug. Lyla hummed in the kitchen, frying pancakes. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Normally, I'd never touch it. I don't like snooping, but she called out, "Can you check the weather on my phone? I left it there. I want to see if it'll rain later." "Sure," I said. I picked it up. The screen was already unlocked, a weather app near the top. My finger tapped and accidentally swiped. The phone opened to a list of recent files. At the top was a PDF titled Property Ownership, Rural Residence. I could have backed out, gone straight to the weather app, called out partly cloudy. That's what I should have done. Instead, something in me, that hardened instinct from years of due diligence, whispered, "Look." I opened it. It was a deed. A small house in a rural town I'd never heard of. Owner, Lyla Hayes. Inherited from her father. My eyes scanned the dates. Her father had died a month earlier. A month. She'd told me her parents died when she was 20. She'd never mentioned any recent death. No funeral, no documents, no anything. My throat tightened. "Jeremy," she called from the kitchen. "What's the verdict? Are we going to get soaked?" I locked the phone so fast my thumb hurt. "Partly cloudy," I called back. "We're good." She walked in with a stack of pancakes, wearing my t-shirt and a messy bun, looking as safe and familiar as any domestic scene I'd ever imagined. I ate, I smiled, I laughed when she got syrup on her nose. All day the document pressed at the back of my skull. Maybe it's a mistake, I told myself. Maybe the date is wrong. Maybe father means someone else. Maybe she considered herself an orphan long before he actually died. Later, as she was getting ready to go out, her bag tipped over on the chair. A ring of keys slid across the floor. I bent to pick them up. Apartment key, building fob, a locker key from her old job, and one long, old-fashioned key I'd never seen before, on a small wooden keychain shaped like a house. "What's this one on?" I asked. She snatched it quickly, almost too quickly, and shoved it back into her bag. "Oh, that? Nothing. Just an old key from my childhood house. I keep it for luck," she said lightly, not quite looking at me. The wrongness settled deeper. For a week, the knowledge sat between us like a third person at the table. I watched her, the practiced way she skipped over family topics, how she swerved conversations away from childhood, how she never once mentioned a father dying. At work, if someone tried to hide something from me, I saw it. I could feel it in the way they avoided eye contact, in the way they arranged their numbers. At home with Lyla, I found myself making excuses for her. She's been through a lot. She'll tell me when she's ready. It's not my business. The problem is, once you see a crack, you can't unsee it. One evening when she was in the shower, I picked up her bag. The long key was there, cool and heavy in my palm. I stared at it for a long moment, then slipped it into my pocket. The next afternoon, I cleared my schedule with an email about a site visit out of town. I didn't tell Lyla. I didn't ask her anything. I just drove. Out of the city, past the suburbs, onto smaller roads lined with fields and tired houses with peeling paint. Places where time moved slower and dreams moved away. The GPS led me to a narrow road with a leaning mailbox. The name on it matched hers. The house was small, sagging, its paint flaking. A crooked porch, overgrown grass, one shutter hanging by a hinge. It looked like every place people spend their lives trying to leave. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the tick of cooling metal and my own heartbeat. Then I took the key from my pocket and walked to the door. The lock resisted, then turned with a reluctant scrape. Inside, the air was stale. Dust, old smoke, spilled alcohol. A TV remote lay on the arm of a stained couch. Empty bottles crowded a coffee table. A jacket hung on a chair, as if its owner might come back any minute. Family photos lined one wall in cheap, crooked frames. I stepped closer. Lyla at different ages. 5, 10, 16. In each picture, there was a man beside her, thick-necked, heavy-eyed, a beer bottle in hand more often than not. His face was bloated in that way that comes from years of drinking. Her father. I could see her eyes in his, and it made my skin crawl. On a side table under a pile of unopened mail lay an official-looking paper from the hospital. My gaze snapped to the words, "Cause of death, acute alcohol poisoning." Date, 4 weeks ago, the same time Lyla had been laughing in my kitchen, telling me she had no one. I set the paper down, carefully. Another envelope lay beneath it. Some municipal notice, overdue bills, social services letters. All of it painted the same picture. A man drinking himself into oblivion in a house that no one really lived in anymore. That story was tragic, but it wasn't the betrayal. Down a narrow hall, there were 2 doors. One sat slightly ajar, showing a messy bed and overflowing ashtray. Her father's room. The other door was closed. On it, in chipped paint, someone had once written a name in big letters. Lyla. My hand hovered over the knob. I knew in that moment that once I went in, there would be no way back to ignorance. No more pretending I didn't see the pattern. I turned the handle. The room smelled different. Less of smoke, more of dust, and something faintly floral. A neatly made bed. A shelf of worn stuffed animals. A cracked mirror above a small desk. And one wall completely covered. I actually stepped back. From floor to ceiling, taped with care, were pages. Printouts, newspaper clippings, screenshots, photographs, notes and pen. It took a second to process. My face stared back at me from 3 magazine covers. An article. Jeremy Cole, the young shark transforming city skylines. A screenshot from my company's website. My biography highlighted. Another from a business profile. A diagram of my corporate structure, names of key employees underlined. My name was circled in red in multiple places, like a suspect on a detective's board. Beside some of the printouts were small handwritten notes. Love small indie bands. Mention one early. Grew up middle class, not old money. Play hard worker, not entitled. Ex-wife left because he works too much. Talk about valuing quality time. Has pug named Oliver. Childhood pug story. Peanut. Favorite author. Interview 2019. Buy, bring to work. Doesn't like flashy women. Clothes simple. Minimal makeup. My eyes moved lower to another cluster of scribbles. HQ address, wait outside one evening, by accident. Pretend surprise he works there. Oh, I didn't know you worked here. Treat him like employee, not CEO. Ask, won't your boss be against it? If he invites you upstairs. Men like him always treat it as important. Make him feel normal, just one of the office guys. It was like being punched in the chest twice. I could hear her voice again on those steps in the rain. I didn't know you worked here. Won't your boss be against it? Back then it had felt cute, humbling. Now I could see the ink that had rehearsed those lines. There were timelines. Week 1, 2, friendly barista. Remember order, band t-shirt. Week 3, 4, introduce shared interests, band, pug, book. Week 5, 6, hints about struggling but making it on my own. Week 7, create situation to elicit sympathy. Job loss, landlord, no family to help, underlined twice in red. Always look sincere, no lies about feelings if possible, just omissions. On the desk lay a notebook, open to a page that read, if I can get him to see me as someone who understands him, he'll want to protect me. Men like him always want to save someone. I just have to be that someone. My knees felt weak. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. My life, my preferences, my wounds, my habits, reduced to bullet points. A strategy, a plan of attack. The indie bands, the pug, the I didn't know you worked here. The worried question about my boss, her shyness, her reluctance to accept expensive gifts. Her monologue about not wanting to be that girl. None of it had been coincidence. Maybe some parts were real. Maybe she really did like that band. Maybe she really had worked since 16? Maybe. But how do you separate genuine from constructed when everything is written on the same wall? My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lyla. Her contact photo popped up. A selfie from the park, her hair messed up by the wind, Oliver licking my ear while she laughed. I stared at the screen, then I answered. Hey, I said, keeping my voice even. Hey, she chirped. Where are you? I was thinking we could try that new Thai place tonight. If you're not buried in work, I mean. I'm finishing something, I said, staring at the notes behind me. I'll be home later. We need to talk. A beat of silence. Okay, she said slowly. Is everything all right? No, I said, but it will be. When I walked into the penthouse that evening, she came towards me like she always did, arms starting to reach for a hug, eyes warm. I didn't move. She froze. Jeremy? Sit down, I said. Something in my tone made even Oliver withdraw to his bed. Lyla sank onto the couch, confusion written all over her face. You're scaring me. Did something happen at work? You lied to me, I said. She blinked rapidly. What? No, about what? Your parents, I said. Your father, the house you own, the job you lost. The color drained from her face. Don't, I cut in, voice like glass. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. I was at your house today, Lyla, the one in the countryside, the one you inherited from your father a month ago. The father you told me died when you were 20, the house you never mentioned while you were sitting outside my office in the rain, saying you had nowhere to go. She stared down at her hands. You showed up under my building, I continued, and told me you just wandered there, that you didn't even know I worked in that tower. You asked if my boss would be angry if I took you upstairs. I let out a humorless sound. All of that might have passed as coincidence if I hadn't just seen your notes telling you to say exactly that. Act surprised he works here. Ask if his boss will be against it. You wrote my headquarters address down, Lyla. You knew where you were sitting. Her eyes snapped up, wide and wet. I can explain, she whispered. I'm sure you can, I said. You're very good with scripts. I didn't mean— You didn't mean what? I interrupted. You didn't mean to cover an entire wall with my life? You didn't mean to map out which band shirt to wear, which author to mention, exactly when to cry on my doorstep? She flinched like I'd hit her. I was desperate, she said. You don't understand. You're right, I said sharply. I don't understand. Help me. You had a house in your name, a living father until a month ago, a place to go. But instead you came to my building, sat in the rain, said you had no one and nowhere. You let me believe that if I didn't take you in, you'd be on the street. And all that time there was a key in your bag and a deed in your files. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That place is not a home, she said. It's hell. My father was drunk more often than he was conscious. That town treated me like trash. I left at 18 and never looked back. When I said my parents were gone at 20, it's because they were gone in every way that mattered. That's not why I'm angry, I said. You can have complicated feelings about your family. I'm angry because you constructed a narrative meant to bypass every defense I had. You studied me like a target. You made a plan. She swallowed hard. Yes, she whispered. I did. The honesty stunned me more than denial would have. I was back there, she went on, voice shaking. In that house, working double shifts, watching my father drink himself to death. My life felt like a trap I would never crawl out of. And then I saw an article about you. This young guy who wasn't born rich, but climbed up anyway. You talked about how you respected people who worked hard, how you hated gold diggers. You sounded different from the other rich men I'd seen online. She laughed bitterly. So I made a stupid, horrible plan. I told myself if I could just get someone like you to notice me, to care, maybe I wouldn't die in that town. So you turned me into a project, I said. I turned surviving into a project, she shot back weakly. I looked you up. I read every interview. I printed everything I could find. I found out where you got your coffee. I applied for that job because of you. I bought that band t-shirt because I knew you'd comment. I memorized your order. I quit my job the day I showed up at your building. I sat on those steps because I knew you'd walk out eventually. Yes, I orchestrated it. Hearing it out loud made me feel like my insides were being rearranged. But something happened, she said, leaning forward. Once I got close to you, I didn't expect to actually like you. I thought you'd be arrogant, controlling. You weren't. You were kind. You listened. You remembered things about me no one ever bothered to remember. You made me coffee and pretended it wasn't terrible. You carried me to bed when I fell asleep on the couch. That wasn't in any notes, Jeremy. That was just us. I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. You say you love me, I said, but everything you showed me at the beginning was calculated. You picked which parts of yourself to display based on a strategy. You lied about not knowing where I worked, about thinking I had a boss. You lied about having nowhere to go. How am I supposed to separate what was real from what was rehearsal? I didn't lie about everything, she insisted, voice cracking. My dad really was a drunk. I really did start working at 16. I really do love that band and that author. I meant it when I said I hate gold diggers. But I edited. I leaned on the parts I thought you'd respond to and hid the parts I thought would scare you away. That's what everyone does when they first date someone. I just did it on a bigger scale. This wasn't just putting your best foot forward, I said quietly. This was building an entirely new leg. She winced. I was going to tell you, she said. I swear. I kept thinking. I'll tell him next week. After this deal. After this trip. And then you'd look at me like I was the best thing that ever happened to you. And I'd choke. Because I knew if I told you the truth, you'd look at me the way you are now. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. We'll never know. Because you never gave me the chance to choose you with my eyes open. A silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, "What now?" I took a breath. The words tasted like metal. "Now you leave," I said. She stared at me, stunned. "You're just going to throw me away? After everything we've been through? I'm not throwing you away, I said. I'm correcting a mistake. I thought we'd built something honest. We didn't. I'll sign anything, she rushed out. Prenup, postnup, whatever. You can put in there that I get nothing if we divorce. I don't care about the money anymore, I swear. I love you. I studied her face. The tears, the shaking hands, the desperation. Once I would have rushed to hold her, tell her we'd figure it out. Now all I saw were lines from her notebook. Men like him always want to save someone, just have to be that someone. I already have lawyers, I said softly. I already have walls around my money. I never thought I'd need the same around my heart. I raised my voice slightly. Ben, my head of security, stepped into the living room from the hallway. I'd asked him to wait there when I got home. Lyla's eyes darted to him, then back to me. What is he doing here? From now on, I said, not looking away from her, Miss Hayes is not allowed into this building unless I give explicit permission. She doesn't come to the lobby. She doesn't wait outside the door. If she tries, you escort her out. No exceptions. Ben nodded once. Understood. Lyla stared at me like she didn't recognize me. You're serious, she whispered. You're banning me? I'm ending this, I said. Tonight you sleep in the guest room. In the morning you pack your things. After that, we're done. Her shoulders shook. She stood slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. I know I hurt you, she said, and I'll carry that forever. But one day you're going to push away someone who's actually honest with you because of me. That's on you and on me. She looked at Ben. I'll go to the guest room. She disappeared down the hall. The door closed softly. I stood there in my quiet living room, surrounded by expensive furniture and design choices I'd once been proud of, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Oliver patted over and rested his head on my knee, whining. I'm done, I told him, voice barely a whisper. I'm done trying. He licked my hand, unconcerned with human disasters. The next morning, Lyla left with a suitcase and a backpack. No screaming, no last-minute begging. She paused in the doorway, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I won't come back, she said. You don't need to threaten me with security. I have a little pride left. Good, I said. It came out harsher than I intended. For what it's worth, she added, when I picture the life I wanted, the tiny house, the bad bacon, the kids running around, it's still your face I see, not your bank account. You'll never believe that. But it's true. I don't know what to believe when it comes to you, I said. She gave a small, sad smile. You're going to be one hell of a lonely old man, Jeremy Cole. Someone might love you for real one day, and you'll send her away because she reminds you of me. Then she stepped into the elevator and was gone. Ben changed the codes. I updated the access list. I shut every door I could. On paper, it was efficient, clean, like terminating a bad partnership. So why did it feel like I'd lost more than I'd ever gained? Life went on. Contracts still needed signatures. Investors still wanted updates. Buildings still climbed into the sky on my orders. People joked that I was back in shark mode. I smiled when I was supposed to. I worked longer hours than I had in years. I answered emails at 3 in the morning without anyone in bed beside me to complain. I tried dating again. Women from my world, lawyers, executives, gallery owners. We had nice dinners. We talked about travel and business and art. Every time one of them laughed at my joke a little too perfectly, a part of me looked for the wall behind her eyes. What band did you Google before this date? What interview did you read? What version of yourself did you tailor to fit what you think I want? Maybe it was unfair. Maybe some of them were the most genuine people I would ever meet. But once you've seen the blueprint, you start seeing blueprints everywhere. Months passed. One evening, without fully deciding, I found myself driving. Out of the city, past the suburbs, towards a small, sagging house in the countryside. The sky was purple when I pulled up. The weeds were higher. The fence leaned more. But there was a light on inside. Soft, warm light spilling through thin curtains. Someone was home. It could have been anyone, I told myself. a buyer, a relative, a squatter. But I knew she'd come back to the place she called hell, to the house she'd used as proof of why she needed to escape. Maybe because when you burn down a life built on lies, the only thing left standing is the one you ran from. I sat in the car, engine off, hands on the wheel. I watched the silhouette of someone moving from room to room, a shadow passing the window that faced the yard, a smaller light clicking on in what I knew was her old bedroom. I imagined her in there facing that wall. Did she rip everything down? Did she leave it up as a monument to a version of herself she hated? Did she ever look at those scribbles about my favorite band, my pug, my boss, and feel ashamed? Or did she just think she hadn't played the game well enough? For a long time, I debated getting out, walking to the door, knocking. She would answer. Her face would appear in that doorway, older by months and by regret. We would talk. She would cry. I would try to hear the difference between real tears and practiced ones. Maybe she'd tell me she'd loved me. Maybe she'd tell me I'd only ever been a ladder out of a drowning house. I didn't become who I am by walking back into structures I know are unsafe just because the lights are on. So I stayed in the car until the light in her room went off and the house sank into darkness. Then I turned the key and drove away. People like to say heartbreak makes you softer, more empathetic, more open. Maybe that's true for some people. For me, it made me precise. You want the truth? I don't trust women anymore. Not the way I did. Not enough to hand over the unedited version of who I am. I keep my softness for my dog and my parents' kitchen. I keep my stories shallow. Childhood details, edited, past wounds, joked about and moved on from. I don't tell dates about lying awake next to someone and realizing you're in love with a person who doesn't actually exist. I don't tell them about driving to a crumbling house just to watch a strip of light in the window and wonder who's lonelier, the girl inside it or the man in the car outside. And I definitely don't tell them about a wall in a small bedroom covered in my life like a crime board. Somewhere out there, Lyla is living with the knowledge that she was clever enough to catch a millionaire and foolish enough to lose the only version of him that believed in love. And I'm living with the knowledge that the one time I really tried to show up to be better than I'd been before, I chose someone who treated my heart like a business plan. If you ever see me in a coffee shop, standing in line like any other customer, and the barista remembers my order and smiles a little too warmly, maybe even jokes about my boss yelling at me for being late, don't be surprised if I take my drink without looking up. Once upon a time, I thought love was about finding someone who felt like they were made for you. Now I know sometimes they really were. They just made themselves that way.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and explore our channel for more love, betrayal, and redemption tales.